So we have got another question from David Granger, who essentially is asking, for a support talent tree for the Death Knights. His idea is that, using necromancy and rituals to sort of animate and buff up your team as they lose health, link yourself to your friends so that if they die, they can come back as ghouls. Basically, really, cool, sort of fantastical, flavorful things that I think just highlight how developing in the context of a game like WoW, where there's a whole bunch of competitive elements, is really damn hard. Because you could almost see the original DK coming out like what he says, or a vanilla class coming out like what he says. But the thing then is, if you actually look at vanilla classes, there's a bunch of cool ideas, neat interactions, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, there's so many dead specs that had cool ideas and stuff like that. It's just they didn't really work in reality. And that's the tricky thing, where if you're doing a single-player game or an action RPG like a Diablo, it's kind of easier to do that stuff.
Yeah, if you're team building in like something like Divinity, you can have, like, if you can mix and match classes all the time and you want to do what you want, then you can have all of that weird stuff. But in the context of an MMO where everyone's playing competitively, or not everyone's playing competitively, but there are people who will play competitively, that stuff kind of doesn't work. And I will always, I think as long as I live, I will be sore about this specific point. But I remember feeling a little bit hamstrung as a druid for, I think, until maybe Mists, maybe Warlords, because I felt like I was losing out on my throughput for being a hybrid.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh yeah, obviously you're going to do less damage because you can off heal. I'm like, yeah, but that means a druid's like break glass in case of bad tank, where they'll off heal, because that's not the optimal way to play the game. Is as much damage as possible.
Yeah.
Having emergency buttons in the trunk isn't useful if you can't actually go anywhere. I think that's one of the things where the more you add to a class, especially when it comes to like someone's dead, they come back up, they're good for a couple of minutes to do whatever. That is so obscenely strong that because of the competitive aspect of PvE and PvP that now has a lot of actual real money and like riding on it for a lot of people, that'll just cause balance issues. And that means, I guess the question is, would you be happy as an Unholy DK to do like 5% less damage than Frost if you could do an extra 10% sometimes when you resurrected an ally as a ghoul? That's the kind of trade-off you have to make, and in a competitive world, that's likely never going to be worth it.
Yeah. So that's the design considerations that come in there. And there's a similar question from Sweet Host, who says, instead of a new class, maybe 1 to 2 new specs instead each expansion that add more class fantasy. And you know what? I actually agree with this, and it's the weird thing where the thing that would make it not seem like the thing to do in my head is a thing of fairness, where it's like, oh yeah, whatever's get a 4th spec, but I didn't. I don't feel good about that. But if there is a good idea and it makes sense to put it into the game, then you could totally see something like that, where, oh yeah, there's 2 new specs this expansion. Yeah, I'll get a lot of people going to those classes, and I don't know. I guess a whole bunch of my sort of vaguely Eastern themed sort of Blade Master stuff wouldn't exactly fit into the fantasy of a warrior, but I think think hard enough about it and you'll almost certainly find stuff there. I mean, you could even just go for Dark Ranger as a hunter new spec that is all like Sylvanas Sea, shadowy kicks and flips and stuff. That would kind of work for a hunter, or like a void hunter. That could be another one, though. I mean, you could see how it maybe wouldn't make sense in some regards. There could be a whole bunch you could do there.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many immediately come to my head, because obviously as a paladin, ever since leveling a little bit in Mists of Pandaria as Holy and having a lot of fun just spamming Denounce, I'm like, yeah, I would absolutely kill for an Inquisitor Paladin range DPS. And not just because it means my Paladin could do all 4, but it would just be, you keep Holy Shock, you get something like Denounce, you get something like Exorcism back, so you are actually you're holding your book open and shouting at someone, and it's killing them slowly. Like, that's the kind of thing I think would be super cool. And then, like the ones I talked about earlier, you've got Time Mage, you've got an Earth, like, Tank Shaman. There's so many.
Yeah.
So many.
I mean, screw you and the fellow paladins. The last thing you guys need is an actual Shockedin spec that's also really good.
Yes, please.
Because you guys got it good.
Yes, please.
But broadly speaking, I agree. Give us an Inquisitor, an Earth Shaman tank. Yeah, I don't know. That's cool. A Survival Hunter.
You okay there?
So that would be sweet. So, yeah, I think there's those issues of fairness that some people might sort of catch and have issues with, but I basically think it would be neat.
Yeah, for sure.